So I have a guitar right here that is in the final stages of assembly, and I'm going to be gluing the bridge onto it. First thing I'm going to do is, well, actually I already did this. I made sure that the surface of the bridge is true to the top. I did that using a radius sanding block. Basically the radius here matches the curvature of the top. So that right there is taken care of. I have these little dowels right here, which I'm going to use to locate the bridge. And at this point, it's important to really check it out thoroughly and make sure everything is how you want it to be, because once this is glued, it's going to be a lot harder to fix any mistakes. So the first thing I'm going to do is check the angle, the neck angle, that is. Stick that right there. You want there to be about 1/8 of an inch or so. That's what I usually go for. You're also going to want to double check to make sure that the saddle is going to be in the correct location, because again, if you have to fix this later, it's much more work, so always good to double check. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the distance from the nut to the 12th fret. I'm going to call that 12.655. I'm going to multiply that by 2, and then that gives me 25.31, and then I'm going to add 0.15 inches for the compensation to make sure it intonates correctly. And 25.46 is where the center of my saddle should be. I would say I'm just a hair back of that, which is actually all right. The string tension is going to kind of pull it together a little bit, and the saddle is large enough that if I need to adjust it, I can crest it either way. I think that's good. I'm also going to check, make sure the neck didn't like shift or something. So just using this as a straight edge, you want to make sure it lines up correctly. Yep, and yeah, it looks like the strings are going to sit nicely going across the fingerboard. And again, this is all double checking, but make sure you do double check it. Bridge is indeed in the correct spot. The angle is good. I don't need to adjust any height. So it also sits nicely on there. I don't see any gaps or anything. So basically that gives me a nice even surface to run my X-Acto blade all the way around the bridge. Alright, so there we are. We went all the way around the bridge. I'm just going to go ahead and do it one more time. The reason for that is just because we want to make sure that the score is deep enough. That will help in the next step. A little tip, when you're scoring around it, let's see here. Basically, you want to position your scalpel blade or your X-Acto blade so that it's basically parallel to the edge of the bridge. You don't want to do it at an extreme angle like that because then you'll actually cut underneath it. And what will happen when you do that is the bridge will actually sit on top of the finish a little bit. And if the bridge is sitting on top of the finish, you won't have a good joint, but it will also cause the finish to actually sort of bubble up in those areas. So even if you see a tiny little line where you scored, in my opinion, that's perfectly fine. I would rather see that than, say, a guitar that has the bridge sitting over the finish. So anyway, score around it, get it nice and deep, and then take your bridge off, and you can see where you scored. So I'm going to use a chisel, and I'm just going to cut it back. Alright, so it looks pretty good. There's a couple of spots where there's just kind of some leftover masking tape and whatnot from where it was masked. There's also some kind of, it's not really unevenness, but there's some bleed from the Coca-Cola bridge that was sitting on there. So I'm actually going to clean that up with a small sanding block. And there we have it. So now we're going to do the dry run. So this right here is our caul. Basically this fits the bridge plate. I made this when the box was actually open. Much easier to do it then than it is to do it now. And this looks pretty good. If at this point you see any gaps or something, you should probably go back and do it again. But I don't, so we are good to go. So we'll have some paper towels close by, some water to clean up. Q-tips are good too. And I like to have some toothpicks. This guitar was made just using regular wood glue, so that's what I'm going to do for the bridge too. Looks something like that. And just for good measure, because I like to have extra cleanup to do. There we are. There we are. Lots and lots to squeeze out. So realistically, I overdid it with the glue right there. It was a really good joint, which means it really wasn't necessary, but for some reason I like to be extra sure that there's tons of glue in there to make sure that there are absolutely no voids. Grab your caul. There's a little bit of tape on there just in case some glue seeps down in there. Let's crank this one right down. Clean up all the squeeze out, or I would definitely recommend making your cauls that are on top of the bridge not overhanging the bridge at all. That will help when you're cleaning up all your squeeze out. Oh, hey there, Bryn. What's up? Come on, Bryn. It's my dog here. Oh. So I'm gonna let this sit overnight. That's just kind of my policy with any major structural joint like this. But I'll probably take the clamps off of it in like maybe 3 hours or so. I've heard that you can actually get away with keeping it clamped up for 2 hours and then you can string it up without any serious or immediate consequence, but there's no reason to do that, so we are not going to do that. It's definitely worth doing this right now than after it dries, of course. And kind of like I was saying earlier with the cauls that are on top, just make sure that they're leaving you enough room so that you can get in there and do this. There we are. All right, and there we are.